Okay. Hi, everyone. This is your favorite friend, Jay or Jailan Salah, as you formerly know her, film critic at Geek Vibes Nation in Session Film. Today, I have two of my channel favorites. I have Kristen Battistella, our women in session, like, oh, modus operandi, the one who runs the whole thing, the host, the familiar sound that you hear every time. And I have Stone Gassman, Christopher Collick, our dear, dear friend, a channel favorite, and also a friend of mine. Together, we are starting to feel the Christmas vibes, the festivities. We're trying to get
Yeah.
into it at least, although it's a very depressing year, and probably next year will also be, you never know what the year brings, but this year has been really rough for a lot of us. But we're trying to at least find a way through art to persevere, to find love, to find peace, to find beauty. And what better way than Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol,
Mm.
which for me, as a child, I loved this book so much, and I loved Dickens because I thought it was a very dark, he's a very dark writer. And for me as a kid, wow, what better way to read than read dark writers? Although people don't really think Dickens is a dark writer. What do you guys think? Because I realized that in other cultures, people think, wow, why is this dark adaptation being made? Because he is dark. Guys, did you read his books? So I want to know what you guys think. How do other cultures perceive Charles Dickens?
My birthday's February 7th, same day as Charles Dickens. Yay.
Okay.
Good start. Good start.
Yes.
Yeah. I
But
think I read A Tale of Two Cities first, and then I read another one that was probably David Copperfield, maybe Oliver Twist, and it had like an intro, and it was like, that's his birthday. And I'm like, oh, yes, great. Who is this? Okay, I'm on board.
okay, so do you think like people think his novels are just cheerful, like celebration, just musicals and stuff like that, or do they get that they're really dark, gritty about poverty, about a lot of bad themes? Because this is what we were taught in school as, like a Catholic schoolgirl, you get sent all the Dickens favorites and you live a miserable childhood trying to imagine, wow, but David Copperfield and Oliver Twist had it so badly. So I want to know, was this the same way? Did you because this is why I'm saying it. When I heard about the Christmas Carol, and I know it's a very dark and depressing tale, and Kristen told me that people complained that the 2019 version was too dark. And I was like, too dark for Dickens. So I want to know why. From Christopher, Chris, or Stone, and from Kristen.
Yeah, the names are going to throw us. But yeah, I think people forget that he's dark because we spent so much time with positive A Christmas Carol adaptations, and not a lot of people do go back to the material. I mean, even at the time, Great Expectations, when it was serialized, had like a down ending, and they're like, you have to change it, and there's a more positive ending. And then in school, you are stuck occasionally, like you're forced to read Hard Times, which is a really heavy-handed, I think it's his worst book. But so people tend to think it's kind of positive, or in contrast, like there's Charles Dickens and Edgar Allan Poe actually wrote each other, and everybody, of course, knows that Poe is like really dark and depressing and melancholy and dread. And they only met like one time, like when Charles Dickens did like his U.S. tour, and then like there's no surviving letters of them, and it's you think like, gee, you think they're total opposites, but then you're like, what did they talk about? Like, oh my God, like to be a fly on the wall with those two, like just dark, demented dudes.
I would have died. What about you, Stone? What do you think?
Oh, well, we'll talk about the musical adaptations later. There are things that need to be said about those because, yeah, I've always seen a darkness in Dickens. I mean, I was one of the few people in my high school class that think I enjoyed Tale of Two Cities.
Thank you.
There was something about it. I just kept on reading it and kept on reading. It was one of the few books from that school year that I came away actually loving. And I think I read David Copperfield somewhere along the way, but I don't remember. And then I read Christmas Carol in college. Actually, I read it in a film adaptations class where we read the novella, then we watched the 1951 version with Alistair Sim and the 1984 version with George C. Scott. So, yeah, I mean, I've always had a massive respect for Dickens, although after The Invisible Woman, for a brief moment, I didn't. But we
Yeah.
won't go there. We won't go into that. But so I always saw a darkness in Dickens that I always thought, I mean, if you're going to turn this into a musical, you better do it right. And
we've had three musical adaptations. We'll talk about those later, but I'll bump it back to Kristen.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this I feel like the musical versions have just gone downhill and it's like just okay, maybe you should just stop doing musical Dickens, please.
We'll get
Um
there. We'll get there.
you know, or maybe just the 70s had it right. I don't know, Oliver, works, but that's about it. No, Oliver and Company, little
Yeah.
Disney version. I guess maybe so many people don't realize how many things we borrow from Dickens. I mean, even like the spin-off, The Golden Girls, The Golden Palace has like the dream sequence, and Blanche is just present, and she's got like a bow. She's wearing a bow, like
Yes.
it's one of like because we've talked about Dracula and Frankenstein before, how like it's impossible for everybody to watch everything that mentions those. But A Christmas Carol, yes, there's a lot of adaptations, but I mean, there's a list of it that you can basically watch all of them. And there's so many of them in some ways. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. And then there's some that have the really dark things. And I read the novel almost every year. There was a streak where I read it like
Oh.
constantly over and over again. And I discussed it also on our podcast with the Women in Session with Amy Thomason because her teaching it in the classroom. So yeah, shout out that or Zeta Short is having her first Christmas in New York. And Amy and her family, her son William, her daughter Elena, they're all traveling this year. So Merry Christmas all to them. So yes, we've had our share talking about her teaching, this Dickens in the classroom of like, you know what, this is dark, this is creepy. And I said this for years before the 2019 dark version of like Scrooge is scared straight. It's a horror story. It's not a happy, joyful, God bless us everyone. There's very few religious mentions actually in it, even though Dickens ironically did write other religious material briefly, but then yeah, was not a perfect dude. Okay, was not, had his flaws. And it's funny, there was also that Man Who Invented Christmas version, where it actually gives you the backstory of like how he couldn't get it done, he couldn't get it sold, he had to rush to write it, he has like writer's block, so all the characters are kind of in his room like waiting with him, like, come on, can you get this story going? Like that was kind of a cute one. I'm like, okay, we'll stick it, let people have their idealized version of Dickens, I suppose, but it's so worth just getting into the deep, deep darkness. Hmm.
Before we get into the meat, the adaptations and everything, like has it has this is this book been adapted more into movies than any other piece of classic literature?
I feel
Maybe
like it's been adapted a lot.
maybe not more than Dracula. Dracula might have more stage or play presentations,
Possibly.
but that's also 1897. This is 1840.
Yes.
But the
Exactly.
idea that the early silent films, I mean, you're literally thinking Edwardian movies were adapting this Victorian novel. That's kind of wild. Hmm.
Definitely. And
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like it's been adapted into a lot of versions, but none of them kind of captures the darkness and kind of like how it talks about, I think, death and some religious themes about, I think, like the afterlife, the purgatory, like heaven and hell, and stuff like that in a way that I think it touches me so much because it captures something about Christmas, like an anti-soul to Christmas, which is usually like, let's go and overspend and shop and everyone is good and we can all be good to our, like relatives whom we forgot all year. But it's not. Some people actually have very miserable Christmases, and some people still go through their crap through Christmas, which I loved. And Christmas is actually very lonely for people who don't have anyone to celebrate with. So I adore that. And I really kind of feel that the versions that didn't capture that right frustrating. So I want to know about your favorite, at least a first favorite version.
I guess for everybody, it's probably Alistair Sim, 'cause that was a big one for many years. But
Why do you like it? Why is it a favorite of yours?
is it my favorite now? I mean, I think I recommended it quite highly, two or three, when I wrote about it for In Session Film. But I I don't know, maybe it's fallen a little bit, but for many years that was like the de facto version that people thought that was what A Christmas Carol was. That even though there's scenes in it that they add, there's a lot of things missing from it, but it is a really great performance. The black and white, I mean, almost adds to the dark kind of creepiness of it. So that was what was popular for many years before we got, some of these other adaptations. Like at the time, the George C. Scott one was actually not very popular. Now it's like, wow, yes, please. Stone.
What is, what
Chris.
about you, Stone? What is a favorite of yours? Because I'll tell
Ah,
you my favorite at last.
I'm not ashamed to admit that the first Christmas Carol adaptation I saw was the Mickey's Christmas Carol. It's a 26 minutes animated, which That title makes no sense. It's really Scrooge
Stuff.
McDuck's. It is. I mean, there are little things that always stuck with me about that version, like the fact that he keeps hitting the snow off the sign. And look, I'm not the biggest Disney guy, and we'll get to that with Muppet Christmas Carol. But and that's what I'm saying. Muppet Christmas Carol was really the one that I embraced because I was a Muppet fan.
Me
I was
too.
already a Muppet fan. The Muppet Movie, Great Muppet Caper, Muppets Take Manhattan, and then eventually Muppet Treasure Island, and then the other Muppet movies. I grew up watching the Muppets, and I
Me
adore
too.
the Muppets. And Muppet Christmas Carol, even though theatrically it was released, this is the thing about Muppet Christmas Carol, because I, aside from the fact it's very unique because of how it's told with all the Muppet characters, it's the one adaptation where the author actually says you should read the book. Look, I
Mhm.
mean, now I wish they would have used the word novella. I wish they would have used that word. I mean, look, my parents loved Muppet Christmas Carol, but we saw it on VHS. So we saw the version with the song "When Love Is Gone."
Mhm.
That was ripped out by Michael Eisner because he thought it was too sad.
Mhm.
He thought it was too sad for children. Oh
Another
God.
reason to hate Disney, honestly.
No, well, see, and that's the thing. It took them years to finally correct the mistake. That's why too little, too late. You have no sympathy from me. But the actress that plays Belle in Muppet Christmas Carol, she actually liked my review of Muppet Christmas Carol on Twitter because I
Ooh.
specifically mentioned that the songs are timeless, including "When Love Is Gone," and she got it. Yeah, I mean, I think Muppet Christmas Carol is just about perfect with the comedy, the songs by Paul Williams. I recently saw for the first time Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise, which had Paul Williams music all in there too. So I mean, every one of those songs is wonderful. And of the three musical adaptations, it's arguably the best one. Um, Neither of you have seen the Albert Finney one from 1970,
Um,
correct?
I
have
have.
you seen it, Chris? Chris, I knew Chris would have seen it. Yes.
I like that one. I mean, because there's the a terrible, terrible Kelsey Grammer. Like, no, please, no, no, no. If you're gonna watch a musical one, yeah, stick with Albert Finney, please. Yeah.
Uh, I liked the music for the most part, even though this is Leslie Bricusse, who you could say actually ruined the musical in the late 60s, early 70s with Dr. Dolittle and then of course Goodbye Mr. Chips. Massive bombs. And this is
When
of
I was
course
a
when
kid, I
the
loved Dr. Dolittle. How
But
dare you
but
use
that
the
era,
word
like even
The Eddie Murphy version or the Rex Harrison version?
the very old one, the Rick Harrison version, of
Oh,
course.
really?
How
Oh, I've
I
never
would
seen
like
it.
sing in front of it, in front of the TV. What are you talking about?
but no,
It
No.
was
even
a
even like 69, like Hello Dolly, you're like these movies just seem like they're like 10 years too late.
When I was a kid, I
yes.
loved these
Yeah.
movies. I don't know if I see it now, I will hate it. I'm not sure.
On
Maybe.
on a clear day, you can see forever.
I wanted to be Dr. Dolittle. What are you talking about?
I didn't see it. I didn't see it. But look, Talk to the Animals. Leslie Bricusse was nominated for an Oscar, and he wrote the 1970 Scrooge movie. I don't like the hell sequence, and I don't like the Father Christmas thing at the end. I'm all for Scrooge singing and dancing, but I'm not for him dressed up like Santa Claus
Mhm.
and dancing in the streets at the end when he should be hanging out with the Cratchit family. Look, if you're gonna have him sing and dance, then have the whole town notice that it's Scrooge singing and dancing and that he's undergone this amazing transformation. Why have him disguised as Santa Claus?
I think that's
That's a
the phase where I don't know, every film tried to do something different, and it's like, why? You could just stick to the story. But then the irony is, I do love the Patrick Stewart one because I think that's probably the most faithful. And they include a scene that's just one line in the book where it's like, and he went to church in spirit of the day before he goes to Nephew Fred. And there's this great little moment where he comes into church and he's like sharing a hymnal with somebody, and he doesn't really know the words, and he's just
yes, I
trying to
love that.
kind of sing along, and he kind of can't. And you're like, he's doing his best. You're like, oh, oh.
And see,
That
I'll
to
take
me,
that
like, is what
scene.
gets it more, you know.
That scene is fine, but don't have him go down to hell and have him Alec Guinness as the go Marley ghost, like have him all chained up and everything. It's just weird.
Mm.
It was just weird. Why does he go to hell?
I like the dark things. Like I'm surprised
Really?
sometimes
Oh,
there's
okay.
a couple dark things in the Mickey Christmas Carol where you're like, I'm surprised they went there. There's some scary animation here, like
Yes. Yes, that's true.
and
That's
then the
true.
Muppets where they're like, we'll see you in the next act. Like, bye, we're getting out of here. Because I love those moments again in like the Dickens writing where he says, "And I in spirit am at your elbow," and it's just that whole like Jaylon was talking about like the Victorian kind of world. Like we lost that. Now we've got like post Tolkien fantasy where we think everything like fantasy is like high medieval dragons or something. Where Victorians were much more like the fairies are just on the other side of the hedge kind of mentality. So like the idea of like the fancifulness existing like side by side, that there's always like that grim darkness there the whole time. And again, like that imagery comes from the literature where he's like even the clocks seem to shiver, or like the buildings kind of leaned into each other, and like the little candle and the frost and the frigidness. It's like for such a visually descriptive book, it's like you notice those things when the adaptations get them right. Like each one has a little piece that it gets right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know we're jumping back and forth in time, but I want to talk about one that we all agree on and we all love, which Kris introduced to me, Kristen,
Oh,
the 2019 A Christmas Carol, which
oh,
is
the stone like that one.
morbid,
I didn't know.
lovely. Yes, Stone loved it. And he
Loved
told
it.
me he kept like on the edge of my seat, like, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you. I'm like, oh, you have to tell me. You have to tell me. So I want to know why you guys like it because I fell in love with this virgin. What is this? I wish I had seen it earlier. And Guy Pearce, just can we just admit that this guy is a great actor? And I don't care if he doesn't get nominated or gets, like an award or something. But seriously, his Scrooge was very, very unique. So I want to know both of your opinions, but we'll start with Stone because Kristen, if she talks about this virgin, she will like talk for half an
Is
hour.
that what is that what the whole hour is meant to be? Yeah, sure.
the 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 3 hour runtime. Yes, I mean the series is 3 hours long with Guy Pearce. I was thinking, I just hope he doesn't make me think of the head of the Whalen Corporation in Prometheus and Alien Covenant.
We need a
Yeah,
TV show of
yeah,
that
yeah,
too. Come
yeah,
on,
yes,
FX, Hulu, Fox,
yeah.
Aliens, let's go.
Like he's walking out very stiff. It's like, yeah, I died and they brought me back.
Never underestimate Guy Pearce. Never.
Never. Look, I've loved Guy Pearce ever since LA Confidential. Okay. The guy is an awesome actor, but he's also like the very last actor I would expect to have played Scrooge. And that's why I love his casting in this. I like the fact his character is very complex, and we get into what shapes his worldview and how he looks at things, which are of course very different than everybody else. And surprisingly, we feel some empathy. I don't think not entirely, but some. But it's up until the point where he crosses the line and does some things that, shall we say, are rather disgusting. But at the same time, it still suits the character. And at first, I mean, I thought about it for a minute because at the end, I'm not giving things shit away, but yes, they
Irony
curse.
that we could talk about a Christmas Carol, but then you say you don't want to give an adaptations pieces away. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. At the end, I was thinking,
Spoiler
okay,
alert, in case
there's
anyone
all,
wants to spoil it for people,
well,
because we love
no,
spoilers.
the entire denouement is only about 10 minutes. Like we only have 10 minutes to wrap up the story. At first, I wasn't sure this was going to work. And then I started to think about it. I love the idea that he's not exonerated after one night of meeting with ghosts. This is going to take some time to win over everybody else's respect again. Because I've always looked at A Christmas Carol, at least I've always looked in terms of the Scrooge character as he finally makes amends with everybody around him and celebrates Christmas. But who knows how much time he has left on this earth to spend with these people. And as long as he remains giving for the remainder years of his life, he'll probably, if there's an afterlife, he'll probably have a very positive afterlife. He'll be forgiven, or not go to purgatory like Jacob Marley is. I love the whole. I love how they expand all the characters, and I love how they give them all motivations, all arcs, all their own side stories and everything. And it gets into some very dark corners. I mean, I wasn't expecting as a dark fantasy. This is an adult thing. This is not for kids in any way. This is very much like almost like
No, no kids
it's
should be allowed.
Mhm.
well, we see a boy drowning at one point. I'm not going to say who it is. I mean, you can take a guess, but I'm not going to say who it is.
That's just people are shocked. Like so many people were complaining at the time of like, oh my God, they ruined Dickens. And it's like, have you not read it? Do you have any idea what Dickens is about? Like, and I get in this argument with people about the Phantom of the Opera. Like, don't you think what do you think that the ballerinas were being with the patrons in the Paris Opera House? Like, come on. Like, don't you think that these things happened in the Victorian workhouses and schools and prisons? Like, come on. This is like the oldest profession. These are the things that happen. And everybody just has this, if you've seen A Christmas Carol once, you've seen all of them. The idea that everybody thinks it is happy, that all it happens in one night. And it's like, no, that's not how this works.
It's
Technically,
not
it's
how
actually
that
three
works.
nights, each successive night, technically. And a lot of them will just have this voiceover of how he became like a second father. He turned into a good man for like the remaining decades or something. But we have this, God bless us, everyone, like hopefulness. And it's like, that's not what this is about at all. It's Scrooge is scared straight. This is a warning, and I absolutely love that the 2019 just extrapolates everything. And it's so funny that you have to predicate, like warn people about it. I had to warn you. I'm like, but it's so worth it. Trust me. I wish it was longer. That is one fault of
Yeah,
it.
I would have been down for
Is it
another
my
hour
turn? I'm
or
sorry. I
two
wish
of
I wish
this.
it was 4 hours because you spend so much time with Ghost of Christmas Past, which makes sense
Yes.
because the idea that who you are in the past, that Christmas is what defines you as who you are. But then you only get like 20 minutes for like present, and then you get a brief moment with future. And it's like I would rather have had equal amount of time with each of them. And particularly
Yes.
some people would be shocked. There's no Fezziwig sequence in this. You wouldn't even really know that it takes place at Christmas. There's not a lot of happy things happening in it. But I wish there had been the scenes with nephew Fred because the Ghost of Christmas Present is the Lottie Scrooge's sister. So it's like, ooh, I would have loved to have seen them together. Like, where do we
Mhm.
get that? So some of it is a little frustrating to me. Like the pace structure maybe is a little flawed where I'm like, I wish there was more. It seems like they just stopped adapting at some point. And then this is the same people who did Peaky Blinders. So I've heard people say like, oh, they made it like Peaky Blinders. It's not really a Christmas Carol. And I'm like, no, yes, it is. Were you not paying attention? But then there's things like Alibaba that are put back in that you don't normally get to see. And then it's like, oh, yes, yeah, yes, please. I could keep going.
No, I mean, no, the thing is, I think that Christmas Carol in general was screaming for an adaptation like this because we've had many, many handsome traditional tellings, like the George C. Scott version, the Patrick Stewart version, the Alistair Sim version. They're all good in many different ways. I mean, the Alistair Sim version, I think, is particularly great. I mean, some of those shots, like when he enters his house for the first time, and we see like the moonlight shine through like the
Mhm.
girders or whatever they are. Oh man, it's so noirish and so uh, moody. I love the mood. I love the mood of the 51 version. I don't like the MGM version from 1938. I think Reginald Owen is a little too.
That's the one with the Lockharts. See, there's like a 35 and a 38, but
Yes,
like, yeah, they all kind of run together at that point.
there's a British version called Scrooge from 1935, which that's the only one that I did not see. I didn't have time to see it. But the 38 MGM version, like, okay, it opens up like the first character we meet is Tiny Tim, and he wants to go sliding on the ice. So like then comes over Scrooge's nephew, picks him up, and is like, well, "Whoa, yeah, come on, he's already disabled. Don't make it worse." Like sliding across the ice, and like, don't do this. And I also like the fact that when the first ghost appears, when the Christmas Past ghost appears, he calls for the cops.
I have to think, is that an American production in
That's
30?
an American production. That's
Okay.
from MGM. It
You can,
had
in that
oh
era, by the time you get up to Mrs. Miniver, you can tell the difference between American movies and British movies in their tone there. As
oh
definitely.
absolutely. And one little interesting connection I discovered was that, okay, the actor that played Scrooge in 1938 was the guy that played Admiral Boom in Mary Poppins.
Mhm.
Well, the actor who played Admiral Boom in Mary Poppins Returns was David Warner,
Oh,
who
yeah.
played
Big
Bob
one.
Cratchit in the
Yes.
1984 version. And
Hmm.
on top of all that, the director of the 1984 version, his name is Clive Donner. He edited the 1951 Alistair Sim version. That's why the endings are almost
Exactly.
identical with,
Yeah.
Scrooge picking up Tiny Tim and they're walking through the snow instead of being in Bob Cratchit's house and everything. And the other weird connection I noticed, this is hilarious. Um, the writer of the 1970 version with Albert Finney, Leslie Bricusse, eventually joined up with director Clive Donner for a Babes in Toyland adaptation in the 80s with Drew
The Keanu
Barrymore and
Reeves one.
Keanu
Yeah.
Reeves. It's like, I can only imagine the conversations they had.
Yeah.
My adaptation was better than yours.
Mhm. Yeah.
No, the 1971 disappointed me, but I will give Albert Finney credit because I mean, clearly he has just as much energy as he did when he did Tom Jones, and I like the fact that he plays both younger and older
Mhm.
Scrooge. That's one thing I did like, and I did like the music too. However, I think it's time to open up the can of worms. It's time to get controversial here, I think, because there was, of all the Christmas Carol adaptations I saw, there was one that I just straight up did not like. Can you take a guess which one?
The animated Carrie one.
Scrooged? Tell me. The
Bill
Bill
Murray
Murray one.
Scrooge. You didn't like it?
Why? Tell me why. Thought it was fun. Okay, you gotta tell me
I'm
why.
in the extreme minority. I knew people all my life that love Scrooge. Some think some to some it's like their favorite Christmas movie of all time. I love Bill Murray.
Mhm.
I don't think. Okay, the thing I have with Scrooge, and this was the third time I've seen it. I saw it way back when it came out on VHS. Then I saw it again years later, and every single time it still has not clicked for me. The weird thing is, I love the fact that when Roger Ebert saw it, he kind of called out the fact that there was something. Bill Murray and Richard Donner did not get along when they were
Yeah.
making the movie. And does it show? I think in spots that I think that I only laugh sporadically. As a comedy, it was written by a couple of SNL writers. I've never been the biggest SNL guy. And I think that's part of the reason why Scrooge just never worked for me, even though I kind of feel like, okay, if you're going to transplant Dickens' story to modern day New York, um, and they make him a television executive, which I get it. Saturday Night Live, television, I sort of get that. Why not make him a Wall Street guy? I'm just saying, I can see a different version of Scrooged in my head. The one thing I will give it is I did love Carol Kane as the Ghost of Christmas Present. Apparently, she messed Bill Murray up
Yeah.
good. That bit where she pulls on his lip, he needed downtime to recover from that.
She seemed crazy. Like I was watching and saying, "Girl, I can feel this has gone too far." It didn't feel like acting, seriously. I felt like she was in pain. This is why it felt like, oh my God, this set must have been hell.
They wanted to make her a demented version of the Good Witch of the North from The Wizard of Oz. Pretty much, and that's what they did. I just look. I love Bill Murray's movies. Everything from What About Bob to Quick Change to Groundhog Day to
Groundhog
Stripes to
Day.
Ghostbusters. Every Bill Murray practically except Scrooged. I don't know if it's just. I don't know. It's the one that I'm just a little baffled by. Why is it I'm the only one on the planet that doesn't like Scrooged? I don't know. I didn't laugh
One
much.
on the planet.
Well,
But
I feel
maybe
like I
maybe that's
am.
it. I mean, the fact that it's supposed to be a comedy, I don't perceive it as a comedy at all. Like Groundhog Day, I don't think is a comedy either. I think
Okay.
it's
Okay.
Groundhog Day is not funny, you
meant to
guys. It's
be dark
so
and
sad.
satirical. And I think that was their argument behind the scenes, that Bill Murray wanted it to be even darker and even bleaker. And the dark
Yes.
studio kept saying, no, there's got to be happy, positive kind of things. And there is some really demented, dark things. I do love the future where you get her, Karen Allen, being like, friend said to me, stop wasting time on these saps and do something with yourself, and the whole separate his secretary, as the Cratchits. And then I love when when James Forsythe shows up and he's got like the hole with the golf ball, popping out.
Exactly. I love
Like
this too.
Robert Mitchum's called the studio. Like I think they play with it again. I feel like maybe now kind of come back around ahead of its time with the television within, because they're supposed to be doing a presentation of A Christmas Carol that he's darting in and out. He doesn't recognize when, like, he
Very meta.
teacher
Yeah.
comes to see him. Have you tried staples on their little heads within the sexy dancers? He's like, show their nipples, like, come on, this is television. So this idea that the TV shares, the ad revenue is what's more important, than, the spirit of the season, what's happening. Send them a VCR versus towels kind of thing. So I feel like it did kind of hit for the time, but I feel like a lot of people didn't get it, or people took it as the funny for face value instead of,
Hmm.
again, seeing the deeper demented Dickensian things. So I think people just don't want to see the demented Dickensian things. That's too close to home, because because so many of these adaptations start out with the exact same almost verbatim beginning of the novel, where it's, stake of holly through his heart, and all the bah humbug, which we've come to mean, opposite term, where it's like Scrooge isn't wrong, where he's saying, you're all being jerks because you're all just pretending to be nice and going into debt and buying presents for people that you don't care about, instead of, actually meaning it like the rest of the year. And he's like, but yet you think me ill-used, picking man's pocket like the 25th December, like I'm the a-hole. So bah humbug to the rest of you, So I like Bill Murray's like doesn't get it and thinks it's all about, this is great TV ratings, because look at us now. I mean, look at us now. Mm-mm. Sorry.
Well, what do you, what, well, yeah, Jalen, what do you think?
I love it. I love that it's
Okay.
very, it breaks.
Okay.
Okay, you're only cornered now.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Oh, I love it when this happens. Okay, I totally get what you say, but the things that I love about it the most is the way that it's kind of meta and it's very breaks the four. It gives like the opportunity for when he's talking to himself or the ghost, the way that you talk to a screen, or it breaks the fourth wall in my head. So I really liked that. I felt like the commentary on this, TV set environment was actually in the favor of the character.
I
Like
like he's trying to tell like the ghost of the past, the cab driver, like, oh, he really did this and he loved this woman and this happened and that happened. And he's like, that was like the homecoming episode of Little House. Like your whole life has been surrounded by television. This idea
exactly.
that, yeah, we're in this fake facade kind of world, that within is, I think, is very good.
It takes me in a different world than what's usually out there for Scrooge and for the Christmas Carol. It didn't give me the vibe of what I wanted from the Christmas Carol, but it did it in a smart, intelligent way. This is how I saw it. Yeah, of course the humor kind of doesn't stand for me except in some certain pieces, certain like dialogue lines. But what I love about it is when you sometimes want to do an adaptation and you want to improv, do it. Like kind of like throw away the material and do something that is really revolutionary, or stick to the material and be faithful, or do something that, like A Christmas Carol 2019, it has some elements that weren't in the original novella, but at the same time, it's mostly faithful. This is what I would envision A Christmas Carol to be. It's about the depression of Christmas. It's about how Christmas can sometimes be a very depressing and dark time for many people. And it's actually,
Time.
I
Like
mean, yeah,
people's expectations of A Christmas Carol, thinking of like happiness instead of depression. So like if the names were changed for the 2019, people would look at this going, this is so like downright Dickensian. But yet when you put it out front, they're like, oh, no, 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 poo poo poo. This isn't A Christmas Carol. This isn't A Christmas Carol. Mm-mm. I think to me the Patrick Stewart one I feel is like the really only faithful adaptation. And then I
Hmm.
made the mistake after I saw the 2019. I was like, I need to absorb this. Like, oh, like, oh my gosh, like what is this? And then I rewatched the Patrick Stewart one right after. And there was a part of me that was like, God, I wish I would have had Guy Pearce, like a faithful adaptation, saying all these great Dickens things. And then I'm like, but
Yeah. that.
I know why he didn't. Like, if it had been a faithful adaptation, he would have been like, "Well, I'm not going to do it. That's been done. I need to do something different." So I'm like, I totally, totally respect. And then Amanda, but I squeam in. Like, I'm sorry. Like, when you do get the scene on the street of like, oh, the workhouses, aren't they still in operation? Then let the people die. And you do get this evil visage on him when you do get that one bah humbug, and you're just like, oh my God, like, yes. Yes, this is like I am picturing the book, man. Like, yes, like, oh my God, like, oh, he gets it. It's beautiful. Excellent. I'm sorry.
I think because the descriptions that Dickens wrote too in the novella, and when you see them on his face, like in the beginning when he's describing the character and it's a shot of him, this is what I would want to see in a faithful adaptation. I want to see the words that I read and enjoyed portrayed in an actor. Like the way he does with his facial expressions, the body language, the bitterness, the coldness, the poison that pours out of him. The idea that this is a person who keeps piling up money and never spending and not being generous. I would love to see that in a performance. And I guess he kind of gave me that. So I never saw this with Bill Murray. Bill Murray was like hilarious, idiotic, like Scrooge for me. But at
Maybe
the same
that's
time,
part of it too. You never
I
just
love
catch
that
that it is Bill
exactly.
Murray because it's just Bill
That's the
Murray.
thing. It's just it was like a really cool dark humor one. So and this one was a drama and the Muppets is like my childhood in a nutshell. Still
Oh
loved it
yeah.
and loved the novella. So this is how I see it for me. Like this is my three favorite adaptations so far. But I want to know the rest of your adaptations because Stone had like thousands of adaptations and you have to tell us your opinion about every one of them.
Well, okay. Scrooged is obviously my least favorite. It's just my least favorite. My top three would be Muppet Christmas Carol. That's will always be my number one. The Alistair Sim version, and I think I'll even go with the Guy Pearce version for a top three. I mean, the George C. Scott one is really, really good. And the Patrick Stewart one. I mean, both of those are good, and yet they kind of almost cancel each other out. I know that I'm not saying that to be, to go down on them, but at the same time, they are handsomely mounted traditional television adaptations, and they both work beautifully. They don't have, uh, the exceptional puppet work of the 92 of the Muppet Christmas Carol or the songs or any of that or the comedy, which I personally enjoy a lot more. In you know, okay, can we get to Spirited?
I
Did you see it?
Did you see it, Chris? Because I
I
didn't.
saw it, but I think I was like at some point just zoned out. I was not paying attention at all. I was like, what the F is this? Like, stop. Like, it's so difficult to get A Christmas Carol wrong. I mean, like we're saying, it's ironic because I mean, even there was like a Vincent Price, like early TV one, like reading along as stuff was going on. Mickey, it seems like there's television ones pop up quite a lot, but then it seems like you kind of have Alistair Sim, Albert Finney, and the Muppets are like the only big three theatrical kind of versions. And so it's
Yes.
like, and these TV ones pop up where it's just like, okay, they're great. Like, okay, how could you possibly perfect upon this? And instead you're like, what the hell was this? What was this? Like, no.
Based on the resume from where these guys came from, these are the guys that made the Daddy's Home movies. They made a lot of money. I never saw them. And We're the Millers
I
and
know we're the Millers.
Horrible Bosses 2, Dumb and Dumber 2, those type of
Yeah.
bottom of the barrel
Yeah.
comedies.
Do they make money? See, is that what the purpose is? Now, see, I saw
Well,
this and I was like, okay, so is Guy Pearce Peaky Blinders team, are they going to do like a gothic novel like every holiday season? Like, yes, please. But they weren't popular. It was controversial. So, most people forget about this. It's not available on DVD, damn it. Like, I need the DVD.
I mean, okay, so look, I guess what bothers me about Spirited is that, look, the budget was $75 million. This is the most expensive Christmas
Dirt.
Carol adaptation. 20 million each went to Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. Now, did Ryan Reynolds dance and sing his ass off? Yeah, he did. For a first time singer and dancer, I thought he was fine, I guess. Will Ferrell was okay. Some of the comedy was okay. it's it's I thought it was funnier than Scrooge, and I prefer it as a musical over Scrooge with Albert Finney. I do think that it goes, oh, like, well, that centerpiece musical number, Good Afternoon, looks like it could have come from the 1970 musical version. And I really like that song. I mean, I enjoyed the songs for the most part, and some of the comedy wavered between them calling each other dicks and butt cracks, and uh,
Is it
that
PG-13? Because they're
it's
like
P.
not
I think it's PG-13.
because
Yeah,
they're butts,
That,
not asses,
but
when
probably.
was that? Was that made in 21 or 22, or had it been delayed because of the
it
pandemic?
was it was 2022, and they only opened it in limited release because
Mhm.
of the pandemic still. But I think I think it's going to make or break people about the halfway mark because they take this, here again, this meta approach to everything where they jump around, they do some somersaults, assaults with the storytelling, storytelling. What's wrong with me? Sorry.
Yeah, but
um,
that's just
You've
the
been haunted.
consumable, give us something stupid, fun, happy, like desensitized. This is the exact opposite of what Dickens' intention. Because even my husband had that on, and he was kind of like, "Oh, this is still going. This still has an hour left. Like, are you kidding me?" But when I asked him, as I watched a couple of Christmas carols again, as we always do, I said, "Do you want to watch the Guy Pearce one with me again?" And he's like, "No, the one with Scrooge being all nasty." He's like, "You like that dark stuff?" He's like, "I don't want to watch that again." And I'm like, "Okay, okay." But it's like that should be the nature of Dickens, that it should be divisive. Like he says, you gave me
yes.
the mirror. Like, that's the whole point of the story, is that we should be questioning ourselves and our actions and our behavior. Not, yeah, la di da. I could watch Elf if I want to see Will Ferrell, song and dance silly. Like it's just it's weird, this kind of numbness that a movie like that has compared to people saying in 2019, you know, whoa, that was too far to go that dark, even though okay, we're shining the light on everything that people don't want to say or see and hear. The
Right.
difference of like, how could you get Dickens wrong? It's like, you got it so far.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I enjoyed it enough, but I'm just going to go ahead and give it away. So the big twist about this movie is that the Ghost of Christmas Past, played by Will Ferrell, was actually Scrooge.
Mhm.
Ooh.
Oh, now Jay wants to see it.
Now you
And
got
look,
me interested.
Oh,
and look, Ryan Reynolds is basically, we
like the
think
name.
is in the Scrooge role, but it's actually Will Ferrell who's the actual Scrooge. But and Ryan Reynolds ends up sleeping with the Ghost of Christmas Past. They have a little fling going on,
What?
and I gotta confess, I kind of found the Will Ferrell Octavia Spencer courtship rather charming. It's
That's
like,
what
look,
got you.
what? No,
Honestly, I might have liked it more if it had removed like Dickens references to it. If it had just been a regular like holiday
yeah.
story spirits kind of thing, like not Dickens wise. Because it's like, okay, there's pieces where you're like, okay, this is charming, but you're like, yeah, this is this long. How many times is this number
Oh
gonna
yeah.
go around? Like, wrap it up
Oh,
already.
the movie's too long.
No.
It's too long. This movie,
Compared
yeah,
to, yeah, the 2019 where I'm like, more, please. Can we have more, please?
yeah. Spirited has no sense of brevity, unfortunately. But I mean,
But what movie
Exhaustible,
now is short?
disposable. No. And the story is timeless. So why would you make it as disposable content? No.
But I don't know, guys, is there a short movie these days? I'm crying because my dad was complaining to me, like, why is Gladiator 2 so long? He's like, but because he didn't, of course, go to the movie theater. He watched it, like video on demand. And then he's like, but why is it so long? I'm like, I don't know, Dad. This
yes.
is how they do them these days. They have to be 3 hours and torment you. So I don't know. And it's like the first thing he watched after his eye healed. So it's like, okay. But that's the
The reason why I'm given a mild defense is Spirited, because like the 2019 version, it does something radically different with the source material. Completely radically different. Going as untraditional as possible. And here again, I mean, the dance numbers were fun to watch. I mean, as a musical, I thought it worked fine. I mean, I guess my whole thing is that did they have to spend this much money on it? And did they have to, you know, say Dick 27 times?
Mm. People are shocked that there's F-bombs with Kris 2019 on FX. Like, oh no, we can't have that. With it and does so it's ironic because it's a longer time frame. But it does so much with so little. Like there's one part where he's trying to practice saying Merry Christmas in the mirror. And you're like, it's weird because it's a mirror and I don't know if it's CGI'd or they make up him or something, but he keeps trying to say Merry Christmas, Happy of the Season. And like they make this creepy smile and it's like he can't quite do it. He doesn't have it in him, and you're just like, oh. But then they've also got scenes where it's like present or past Scrooge, but there's parts where he seems to be his younger self, but then there's parts where it's relatively only a couple years ago. So it's like you have this, and yet the Scrooge can look different. And it's like you have like a dual Scrooge that's forced to like look at his actions like within the frame. And even the way it's filmed, or sometimes there tends to be like a wall or a fireplace or something in the middle of the screen with like light on one side and him dark on the other. So this idea of like the reflection of your behavior is always there with you, and it's like, and these are just little choice things and I feel like 2019 gets better the more you watch it, that you pick up
Yes.
on a lot of these little things, and so it's, yeah, why are we spending that animated one? I'm like, no, keep it. That Kelsey Grammer weird musical thing. It's like, no, keep it. Like, how could you possibly get A Christmas Carol wrong? It's excellent, even if you just stick with the material a little, like you can't go wrong if you do it traditional, number one, because it's just so great and so good. That's what Patrick Stewart, knocks out of the park. And
Yes.
and it's so funny because George C. Scott is like, you just love George C. Scott because it's like he's so sarcastic. Whereas like you can't hate him. And you're like, but then you're like, damn, dude, And it has these frightening moments. But then it's like you think we love Patrick Stewart, but then he says terrible things too. And then like I just said this to J-Law before, like Guy Pearce being evil, and then says, go and burn your figgy pudding. And you're like, you a-hole. Oh my God. Like, sure. Like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? Like, you're kidding me. But then you're right. And it's so accurate where it's like you say there are times you feel very sympathetic for him, where he even justifies it of saying, look at the bad things that happened to me. So it's not my fault that I'm who I am. And then you're like, as soon as you want to give sympathy, like, oh, dude, you slapped me in the face. Like, and that's so accurate of like cruel, nasty people, the irony that Fezziwig is not in that one, because of course, in the other adaptations where he says he's so happy and he's like, because, an apprenticeship can be hard and bad and difficult. Fezziwig could have made our lives miserable. He could have contributed to our suffering and he chose not to do so. He made everything good and happy. And it's like, but you're like, Scrooge is doing the exact same thing now, so it's like there's so many little nuggets. I think, like, I don't know if it was the time or the money, but it's like to me, it's the opposite. When you see ones that go radical and go too far, like the Spirited, it was halfway through, and I'm like, I don't like, what are you doing? Like, man, this is a mess. Like, who thought this was a good idea? Like, stop, please.
Okay, Stone, come on, admit it. You liked Spirited because Ryan Reynolds is just so charming. If it was another guy, I tell you, you probably would have hated because to Stone, Ryan Reynolds, Paul Rudd, some of his like dudes, you know what I mean? Like
Okay,
some of his
then. But
favorite
then, so
actors.
so I will counterpoint in defense to you. Jaylon, did you only like the 2019 version because it was Guy Pearce?
But I enjoyed it more. Maybe if it was another actor, I would have said like, ugh,
And
no,
that's
because
my bar for it. Because
actors ruin
my
movies, you
husband
guys.
would say, "Oh no, it was because it's Guy. Who the hell would have cast Guy Pearce as Scrooge? Like really seriously?" And it was produced by Tom Hardy and Ridley Scott. And you're like, "Who would have done this? Like really? Really?" Like, I
And I
remember hearing
adore,
it when it first came out. That was my first reaction. I was like, "Really?
no,
Really?"
The
seriously,
bike
Like,
rider Tom
yes.
Hardy.
yeah.
He was probably having it all with Joel Element too.
Oh
Stop it.
no. No, but then to
Ooh,
me,
Tom
yeah,
Hardy
it was
picks
like, you
them
know what? I
right.
still would have watched it if it hadn't been him. But then you're like, but he is
No,
so good.
no, I would have
You
been
watch it and you're like,
seriously.
this should have been longer. I wanted more of this.
Let us be honest. Some actors elevate a movie or bring it down, and Guy Pearce elevated that game. Maybe if it was another guy, it would have been, but oh, it's kind of. Some actors have this raw energy, this fire inside them, this amazing acting technique. Would you have watched Memento with another actor? I'm sorry. Give me a break.
Don't go
No,
there. How
because
much time do we have?
there's like a lot of actors whom you see a movie and would we have watched Heat if it was other people than Robert De Niro? And I mean, I'm sorry, but some actors are born for the idea of capturing your attentions. They make us captives. But some actors you feel like, oh, you're so replaceable. Like
Yeah,
Joe Alwyn, for example. Yeah, you look
yeah.
cute, but if it was another guy, I wouldn't have cared. You know what I mean?
See, that
Like
is what gets me about that one. I feel like anybody could have been Bob Cratchit
that's
in this movie.
true, 100%.
But
What do you think, Stone?
that one I said, The Man Who Invented Christmas, it's Dan Stevens playing Charles Dickens while he's stressed trying to write a Christmas Carol. And he's having visions talking to his characters, and it's Christopher Plummer who's playing Scrooge. And you're sitting here like, why didn't we get a full version of Christopher Plummer as Scrooge? Like, come on, man. Like, oh, that would have been awesome. Oh, it's like you can yeah, I'm kind of like, this was supposed to be a Dan Stevens vehicle. Like, no, 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 no. Like, okay, maybe he's fine, but no, it's like, give me Christopher Plummer, please. Please, more, please. Thank you. Sorry.
As long as we don't get a CGI version with Jack Black, I mean, or an AI version with
Don't
Jack
speak it.
Black.
Who knows? Who knows? And it's
Uh,
ironic because this is 2019. Okay, it's the Spirited, I guess. The 910 was like the animated stupid CGI one. But
the
like,
one with Jim Carrey.
yeah, I
I
think.
never saw that one.
Me too. I kind of
It's
hate
not
the
worth
Jim
it.
Carrey. Like I love the Grinch, the original Grinch stuff, but not the Jim Carrey one. I don't know.
I really don't like that look, honestly, like the Polar Express. I'm like, and
Yeah.
that's a whole other
Oh, the
story.
Polar Express is
Again,
a
Uncanny
sinister film.
Valleys, the movies.
the first time I saw Polar Express, like with my nieces, I'm like, this is not a kid's story. Like, oh my God, are you serious? Kids are being like abducted on the train or something. I'm like, this is not family friendly. I'm like, what? This is creaky, scary. No. But like, it seems like, dare I say, our Christmas Carol adaptations few and far between. And like we're saying, they tend to not be big release movies. Like if they spent all that money wasting time on all the actors and Spirited and it ended up dumped on streaming. So it's like, I don't know, people don't feel the need to constantly adapt a Christmas Carol per se, compared to so many other things. Like we've had multiple Draculas and multiple Frankensteins
Yeah.
immediately. Yeah.
So
Which
I
is
feel
like
at this
to me
point,
is also a testament to maybe we do have really good adaptations already. Or you could just read the book. It's only 88 pages.
oh yeah, absolutely. But that's what I'm saying is that I gave Spirits a little bit of a pass because I thought, like the Guy Pearce version, it's radically different than anything that came before it. And I'm okay with that. You know, and yes, I do like Ryan Reynolds, believe it or not. You
But
know,
why not? He's charming. But he was
he was
charming to me
overpaid, but yeah, he's charming.
until Just Friends. You know what I mean? This is my icon. Although Samantha, yes, girl, go get them. Those two losers, Jamie and what's his name, kill them both. Samantha is my favorite
You
But he
character
was
in that
paid $20
movie.
million. They could have made a movie for that.
exactly. He wears a sweater that reminds one of Just Friends at one point. But no, they actually throw out this line about Scrooge. It's like Ryan Reynolds says, "You mean the one with Bill Murray and Bobcat Goldthwait?" So that's another thing about Scrooge. Bobcat Goldthwait is one of the most unfunny guys I've ever experienced on a screen. I
God.
mean, that same year he did the same movie Hot to Trot
That's what I
about
was gonna say. I love
a
that.
talking Hot to Trot. Oh
When
no.
a spoiler for people who haven't seen Hot to Trot, when the horse wins the race because his bucked teeth cross the line first.
We have to do an episode on our comedies. That's what I
Oh
think.
man.
Because I think we have extremely different opinions on what a great comedy is. I feel it. Because I'm more into, like Horrible Bosses and all those crude comedies than you guys are.
The
I
way
like
we
the
have
first horrible
Me
bosses,
too, the first
not
one.
the second one.
And
Yeah.
Jennifer Aniston in that one. Oh my, I
but
love this
see that
character
you
so
can
much. Amazing. She's just
yes,
awesome.
okay. I think, yeah, you're saying that like the way the Guy Pearce one is so radical, but I think it's totally like extrapolating what's in the Dickens. So in a way, it's not so radical compared to our idea to just make everything a comedy. And it's like that's so far off of what Dickens' intentions were.
They are scared
Fair
probably
enough.
of
Fair
Dickens.
enough.
This is
People
why they
at
want
some
it to be a
point
comedy.
But at some point, people will poo-poo the traditional ones. And even though you could do, like you were saying, so many scenes, like some of them have, the Marley door knocker, and some of them have like all the bells ringing in the flat. Some of them
Mhm.
have like when the locomotive goes through the stairs or the little ghosts like moving around in the fireplace. Like they each all have little pieces. And it's almost like if you could edit them all together in one omnibus, would you get the whole story? Yeah. But I don't know. I still like the George C. Scott doing like the dark things.
Yeah.
I like that the Patrick Stewart one has things that aren't usually on screen. But Jayla, when we talked about Frankenstein, the idea that people think they know what it's about, but then when you have like Kenneth Branagh's version where people are like, wait, there's this whole separate story of like a little brother or like another murder or like another crime. And it's like, well, that's actually what's in the book, if you actually bother to pay attention. So it's like I don't mind. I would not care if there was another tradition. If you would have had Ryan Reynolds being a traditional Scrooge, I think it would have been totally different.
Right, right.
But if
Well,
you
I
have
was going
to,
to mention about the Marley doorknob thing.
hmm
Yeah, not the doorknob, but when he appears in the door, what's on the door? Like
it
the
probably was one of those old-fashioned like lion knockers, and then it just
that's
becomes like his
I
face.
love
it's
those
like an
things.
animal in every single movie, but every single adaptation has that bit, including the very first one from 1901 called
Wow.
Scrooge or Marley's Ghost, which was made in England. And yeah, the trick photography is astonishing for 1901. There was another version made in by the American Edison Company in 1910, which is about 13 minutes long, which actually introduced the three ghosts for the first time. But yeah, watch the 1901 version also because it's only 5 minutes and it's definitely a piece of film history that
The
that
irony that older versions are so interested in trying to play with the ghostly elements because that's kind of all they have, like primitive chroma key overlay kind of
yes,
thing. And I think that gets to the heart of the story more. I mean, the way the black and white, the crisp, the gray scale of it, and how different versions, like literally the word, like, why don't we talk like this anymore? Like the shade also being like a specter or a phantom. But then like when they go to the
right.
window and they lift up the curtain and it's like the veil has been lifted and just the things that Marley says, mankind was my business, the common welfare. What did trade mean? Now we're wailing because we can't interfere for the common good of man. And these beautiful things. And the word situation, when like now the way people try and change up the dialogue, even if they try and be a little accurate, like you'll lose your job. And it's the idea of why don't we ask people what their situation is? Like even like there's a couple, it's George C. Scott where he doesn't know, like Cratchit's got a little kid. He's like, get away, beggar. He's like, no, I'm
Yes. Yeah.
like he doesn't even know about anything about his family. He doesn't care at all. This idea that like we should be asking these questions about people. Isn't that what Christmas is supposed to be about? And
Mhm.
and then you get Scrooge with like, oh, there are no workhouses, are there prisons? And you're like, dude, no, stop. And I get emotional. So, there's sometimes I think I'm fine. I'm like, I know it by heart. I've read it. I've seen every one. I've watched 10 times already. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm getting choked up again. Damn it. Damn it.
I love in the 1910 version because everything is so static. I mean, there's only like a single set and one camera and like there's no dialogue. So when he comes out of this tavern after he's eaten for the night and he's going home, like there's some carolers and somebody holds out their hat to get a donation. He just backs that. Oh my God. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
take
yeah,
it.
there's already kind of built-in comedy in Scrooge being such a jerk, where he's like, "Oh, there's more about gravy than grave about you. You're undigested beef. You're a bad potato." And then he's like, he's
Yes.
like, "Oh, speak comfort to me, Jacob." And he's like, "Oh, you'll be visited by three ghosts." And he's like, "Couldn't I just have them all at once and get it over with?" You're like, "You jerk, man." And the idea of like when Marley says like my chains, are big and long, and you've been working on it 7 years longer, and the way Scrooge like looks around like he expects to see his chain. And you're just like, damn,
Yes.
dude, like, yeah, like so like to me, everything is already there for to Dickens to take off the page, absolutely. Yeah.
Jacob and Robert Marley.
The two Marleys, yes. And and the thing that I love about the Muppets, like you said, I mean, how much money did you say they spent on it? That it's actually kind of the accuracy, like the little frock coats, the little waistcoats and vests that the Muppets are wearing. It's like they didn't have to go all in on that. And that could have been so, so wrong. And the fact that Michael
Oh,
Caine is
yes.
playing it serious. That,
Oh, we
like,
haven't even mentioned Michael
you
Caine.
He
know,
was
like
brilliant.
it's
I love
like,
him as Scrooge.
yes, you're like
Perfect
he didn't
Scrooge.
have to do it that way. The only person on set, I don't know, he could have made it funny, laughy, phoning it in or something. And that he plays it dark. Like there's a couple times where like the Muppets, go back
And
away.
as a kid, I hated him so much. Like he's being mean to the Muppets. What can I do to kill this guy? So it's just amazing. It was amazing of him. Like this is an
That's
acting
what it
pro.
should do. I mean, we should hate Scrooge at some point. And the irony is that means we should hate ourselves. We should ask ourselves what we're doing. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
To me, it's very deep. It's very philosophical. Even the Muppets.
And then when Scrooge starts weeping during when love is gone during the musical number, oh man.
Well, because
It
a lot of adaptation, a few of them will mention the sister by different name, or a few of them will have
right.
like a Belle or the Isabel. And I don't understand why they often excise that, because to me, that's a very critical moment where she says, we were poor when you loved me, and would you pursue me now? And she's like, I release you. You've got a new idol that you love more than me. And the fact that Scrooge walks away. And you're
Hmm.
like, dude, like even the 2019, I love the way they use like the Victorian, like the hat with like the little zoetrope kind of little spinning kind of thing with for Guy Fieri, where he just gets like this little video of like, look, you could have had a family, you could have been happy, but and this upsets you more that your regret than your current actions. Like, well, then maybe you should work on fixing that. So I find very deep things in this. I never get tired of it. I think it's a story that just keeps on giving. The irony that it's
Oh yeah.
40, but everything speaks to now. I guess that's what annoys me by something like The Spirited or the cartoon, where it's like we're supposed to look at the animation, or oh hey, Kelsey Grammer's voice. The ones that are bad, where it's like you don't need to add on to the Dickens. There's already, so much here already that we should be looking and expressing and analyzing. Sorry, and I overanalyze.
And what's your top three, Kristen?
Ooh, that's tough. When I did them for in-session film, I think I only was going by like film version. So I think I had like, well, Muppets was the exception to me, because to me
Right.
Muppets is kind of to me the complete version, because it has darkness. It's a relatively faithful
Yes.
adaptation. Michael Caine is excellent. And the idea, but yet it's also anybody can watch that one. It's, totally family friendly. So it's like Muppets, but I do love the faithfulness of the Patrick Stewart. But then everybody I think is beholden to Alastair Sim. And I do love George C. Scott. Then it is like, yes, but to me, it's like, Guy Pearce is not forever Scrooge. And you think like, I guess he was only like 50 when he made that. And you're like, oh wow, I'm impressed. This is why I keep coming back to him as an actor, because I'm just continually impressed. Because everybody I think was like at first like, he's Scrooge, really? And even I was like, really? But then I'm like, but Guy Pearce and Charles Dickens, like, oh my God, this is gonna be awesome. Now I'm kind of like, and they did do a Great Expectations adaptation with Olivia Colman a couple years after. And like I said, I think they intended to do more of these Dickens kind of series within like this whole, not Peaky Blinders universe, but it's the same production kind of company. And
It's part of the Peaky Blinders
yeah,
darkness,
but
like
I
spin
don't think they're
on
I don't think they're
things.
making any more of them. And it's like, well, please, can we do this, please? But um, more Dickens.
How was the Great Expectations one? Was it good?
I haven't watched all of it yet.
We have to watch it and then discuss it here, all of us.
Great
Although you could be
again, Great
a non-Olivia
Expectations.
Colman fan. I don't know.
Not
I want to
really.
watch it. We have
There's
to
there's
do
been a
more
couple
Dickens.
already great adaptations of Great Expectations, and then there's been a couple like really like
Oh, the Gwyneth
I
Paltrow
haven't
yeah,
heard they're
version
good.
that the creators have dumped on ever since.
like why did you do that? No.
Why?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Mhm.
Okay, so you guys would recommend which versions to people? Like, okay, first of all, would you recommend A Christmas Carol, any version, to people who would compile their Christmas watching list? Would you pick a particular? But let's be like, I wouldn't recommend this
As many as
Christmas Carol
possible.
2019 to
Read the book.
anyone with exactly
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
like for
Oh,
Christmas.
110%. I'm like, have you seen the FX miniseries of Christmas Carol asterisk? It's very dark and scary, not for everybody, but but must see. At least
Yeah.
try. I'm surprised. I want to ask people when I see people tweeting, Blue Sky, where they're like, I didn't like it. It was bad. It was horrible. I had to turn it off. And I'm kind of like, why? You didn't even at least see it through? Like, isn't, like you didn't even get past yet? Like, come on. There's so much more to it than that.
Maybe our
I love the
discussion would get
scenes
more
in
people
the
to watch it.
present where they're in the Cratchit house and she says like leave my house, and there's these slight visions of where she can kind of almost see him, and she says when people are emotional or sensitive or children can see these ghosts, or that this time of this year Christmas that ghostly presences are very high, and it's the idea also but that his presence is completely looming over their house, whether his ghostly thing is there or not. His actions are like so beholden over them, that it's like
Because
you can't
he's the
escape this
employer.
oppression.
And
Yes.
because when you have like when we are surrounded by people who work full time, and if you're having a mean boss or you're working in this awful company, the conversation on the dinner table or in, family gatherings will always be the person suffering in a job because of their employers, but at the same time they have to stay there because it pays well, blah blah blah. So it definitely has a grip on people's lives, even inside their homes. You take
And
work
it,
to
it goes
home.
dark with it in their emotion in their segments, and I'm like, to please stick with it, at least give the whole thing a chance. But then it's like all the traditional ones where he's like, let's give a toast to Scrooge, he's the founder of the feast, and the wife is like, excuse you, and then she's like, I'll toast to the day and not him, and Happy New Year, and all the little kids are kind of dreading, they're like, the little toast, Merry Christmas, Mr. Scrooge. The idea that like the bitterness of the season, that you have a choice of whether you're going to be a good person or a bad person, and that you're perpetuating this bitterness and this terrible kind of stuff. And it's like the way, again, parts of the scripting of the 2019 where I'm like, you didn't have to change Dickens, but I get what you're saying. The idea of that we should do something without the expectation of reward or profit, because just doing good should be enough. And it's like we all need to hear that. So it's like
And if you are
people
a
being
bad
afraid by
person,
darkness, it's like no.
and I don't know, I think I love also the idea that if you want to redeem yourself, don't expect people to accept your apologies, and you have to be okay with that. If you've done people shit, you have to accept that they won't take you with open arms. They might still not accept you, but you have to do it nonetheless. So I love that too. I love that concept so much.
100%.
Okay, so
Oh yeah.
Stone, are you gonna put any version of the Christmas Carol on your like suggestions for people to add to their Christmas watch lists?
The best way I can tell people is that, look, I mean, with your kids, with the family, watch the Muppet version, then watch the Alistair Sim version.
Mhm.
After the kids have gone to bed, and whoever is interested in something much more dark, watch the Guy Pearce version.
Mhm.
That's what I say. That's what I say. Those are the three versions that I personally prefer. Here again, I know Scrooge has a fan base with love and respect. I do not.
Us.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I love Bill Murray,
Yeah.
but Scrooge is the one
See, it's
movie I
almost
do
easier to
not.
give you five versions that I don't like compared to just all of A Christmas Carol. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. And look, I mean, if you need more Christmas Carol, watch George C. Scott and Patrick Stewart together. Yeah. So they're very, very, very well executed television adaptations, and they work beautifully in individual ways. Um, yeah. Yeah, that's all I can say. I mean, despite my somewhat enthusiastic response to Spirited, like I get it.
Oh, no,
Yeah, I mean,
I would
it's
definitely take a Patrick Stewart traditional version over his.
AKA
I'm with
Ryan
you. I'm
Reynolds is
with
very
you.
charming. AKA, like, despite my enthusiastic response to
Asterisk,
Spirited, they,
asterisk. Yeah.
between brackets, and Ryan Reynolds is very charming. So, yes, Tone, we get it. I know what you mean. And now we get our recommendations for what to watch on Christmas, our recommendations for the best and the favorite Christmas Carol version. Tell us what you prefer. Tell us if you like what we said or you just still think that A Christmas Carol 2019 is dark and crappy and we all suck. Just tell us what you think, and Merry Christmas to all of you. And any final thoughts, my friends?
I was going to say in closing, I mean, my question would be, I mean, if you were going to do an adaptation in the future, what would it be?
Mm.
Dark as
Ooh,
shit.
I don't know. I don't
Even
know.
darker than
I don't
2019?
know because to me, I'm gonna have to sit with the Guy Pearce one for a long time for a while. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
gonna be too.
true,
I mean,
true,
not
true.
only, I mean, my Dickens love precedes actually my Guy Pearce love for a very long time. It's like it's gonna be tough to replace him as Scrooge, I honestly think. And I guess for people who can't see the Brutalist, you can watch a 3 hour Christmas Carol instead. And the idea that, oh, you
Exactly.
think he's bad and brutal, terrible person in that, it's like, well, guess what? He's already done these kind of
And you
touch
can also see him in
characters.
Brimstone where he was even
Very,
meaner and shittier. So yeah, that one is just gonna give you nightmares, you
if
guys.
you want impressive things that stay with you, that truly haunt you, that's the point. You should be haunted. You should always be looking over your shoulder for, who's doing
The
good and who
ghosts.
could be better.
Yes,
100%. Oh, yeah.
100%.
She's so festive.
I'm trying. And you guys are all goth and dark. Wow, you guys are cool.
Hey,
And
man, spirit of the season here.
our band would be like insane, out of this world. Okay, okay, I get it. But I love having conversations with you guys all the time. I'm just happy to talk to you about this amazing novella. Seriously, Charles Dickens is a very rich writer. I hope you can visit him in other like topics and other things that he's written, other adaptations, because he has a big, huge body of work, which I think we would have interesting conversations like this. This has been amazing. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Stone. Rock and roll.
Yeah.